Welcome to the very first Ask Me Anything Worldspace conference. This is a very new format because I wanted to answer your questions and connect with you guys. And in this conference, people asked me some very interesting questions like, is an online school better than a university? How can I build a strong online presence? How can I approach an action shot? How to know how fast I am as an artist? And many more fun questions. You can know this kind of events are happening through my Discord channel, where you can chat with me, with everybody in the community. I will leave you a link in the description down below. If you want to connect with me on a deeper level, I do have a Patreon account where you can support the channel, as well as having personal meetings with me, priority access to every single one of my events. Sonny, for example, is one of my patrons, and I'm gonna give him permission to speak first. I will leave you a link to my Patreon down below. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let me meet everybody in the waiting room. We're a lot of people. That's really awesome. Hey, Sunny. So let me know.
So I wrote down some questions. Like one of the things that I've been wondering is how do you do your blocking? So let's say you have an acting shot. Do you do the key poses with the entire body, with the facial expression, or do you like segment it out and like separately key each body part in sort of passes, for example?
What I usually do is it really depends a lot on the shot. If the shot is very emotional, if it's driven by the eyes of the character and sort of the face and what they're representing, I try to be very faithful to the facial performance. So in the very early stages of planning everything out, I try to block as much as I can of the face, because I feel that can let everybody know what I'm trying to express. So they can give you feedback, the director or the animation supervisor, they can see your work and be like, yes, this is working, or this is not working so much. So as early as you can put those in. It really depends if you have a very intense for example, body mechanics driven shot, you probably won't care a lot about facial, but in the blocking process, you definitely have to put at least the eye direction, the head direction, some major facial changes, because it really helps you to sell your shot as well. So yeah, that's something I would recommend totally.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you do your blocking always in auto mode, or do you sometimes change it in the preference, or do you change it in the graph editor? How do you approach that?
Okay, I usually use stepped curves, as most of us do. Hi, Rafa. And what I do is I grab all the controllers of my character and I try to set the most important keys. I usually do that. I usually go in and do all the body poses, because then your graph editor becomes really neat, really clean. And if there's something you have to change timing wise, you can just adjust those keys to clean things up. And then when you start to spline things up and kind of move towards that stage of animation, I do like to break things down a little bit to already give that little overlap of certain controllers. But in general, I would say, yeah, it's more comfortable to work that way, and to start building up to later spline or auto.
Nice. And one more, the last one.
Yeah.
This is more like related to something I wonder a lot, is when you have a shot or something, you put it online and you have like music in it. How do you make sure you don't break any laws and like get sued by some major company or something?
Yeah, that's a very smart question, actually. What I do, for example, for my YouTube videos, is I look for free music, for not copyrighted music, which you can find on YouTube. And I just download that video. Usually that's the only thing I do. I try to keep it very straightforward. And if you're not sure about if it's legal or not legal, just try to remain on the legal side always. Don't risk it. Don't risk it. I have had some YouTube videos taken down, and it's like super annoying because you choose a piece of music that you think is alright and it's not. So yeah, I think that's very important for our jobs as creatives. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Don't worry. I do have some questions from the Discord channel that I can address. Is an online animation course better than an animation school or college? Oh, that's a great question. Okay. I can speak from my experience, and I can tell you that I did go to college. I went to university here in Mexico, and I also went to university in France. So I'm gonna tell you what I learned. Here in Mexico, I felt like my university was pretty technical. I mean, I learned a lot about programming, I learned a lot about math, physics, coding, things like that, even though it was an animation program. So I would say I didn't learn art as much as I would have liked to. But then there was this exchange program, and I went to study in France, and that really changed my life. I really enjoyed working with a different culture than my own. To see that everybody was just pushing the envelope so hard was very inspiring to me. I really enjoyed it. I learned a new language. And it's not about the money. Even if you don't have a lot of money to go places and travel around, you can, if you have good grades, you can get major scholarships. That's actually my case. And universities give you a lot of a huge set of skills, which are more soft skills. So I really can tell you that I learned a lot about how to become a leader, how to speak in a conference, how to manage creativity, things like that, more than actually animation. Whereas I feel like a lot of very specialized courses in animation, online courses, do this way better. I mean, if you just want to learn animation and that's your goal, sometimes it is better that than just going to a big university. I would say it really depends on your case, and you always want to check. The demo reels are a huge thing, a very valuable information, and if they're not producing content that's appealing to you, then that's not your university or that's not your online school. Always check graduates' work. And also, I can share with you an experience that I had, which is actually interesting. When I went to work at Canada for the first time, it was important for the Canadian government that I had a degree, which was really interesting because not everybody who's working there, who's migrating there, has a degree. But for me, it helped me. It opened doors for me because the country wants to see kind of if you have a high degree of education, if you speak more languages. So this is kind of important for them. Not so much for the company, but for the country. So if you're coming from a third world country, or there's not a lot of industry where you live, or you just want to move out, take this into account and check the characteristics of the government. That was a very interesting question.
I'm also international. I'm from Ecuador. So another third world country. I'm doing animation mentor, which is just a diploma. Mm-hmm. And I always hear this thing about, for internationals, a degree being very important. And I'm not pursuing a degree. Do you think a diploma could have the same or similar weight? Or if I am planning to maybe get a degree because of the reasons you mentioned. Do you think it's important that it's related to the job you're applying to? Or do they just see degree and they're like, cool?
It is a great question, and I think it's degree cool. So I don't think it matters. It would matter more to you, like having a good set of abilities that can actually help you with what you're doing. I think Animation Mentor is a great option. I love the work of their students that are coming out of those programs. I would 100% recommend that to you. And it's not always the case. This may vary. Like one of my best friends, he's from India. He's right now an animation lead, a supervisor in the best studios around the globe. And he just finished high school. He never went to university. He never went to an online school. So it's really about how well you move in the industry. I know, for instance, right now, I am working remotely. So they didn't care a lot if I had a degree or not, because I'm working from here to the United States, and it's kind of a remote connection. That's very interesting as well. And there are many solutions. So yeah, talk to people who are from your country and have worked elsewhere. Also, it varies because, for example, Mexico, United States, and Canada, we have NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement. And that means that we have sort of a commercial relationship, which makes it easier for me to go to Canada and to the US. but not for me to go to Europe, for example. So yeah, just check your country and how it's related to other countries.
Here from Brazil, I've been traveling to another country as Canada, and I didn't have a diploma either, or not even animation mentor or any kind of document that proves. I just Zamarripa. So don't worry about that.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, not so much. Not so much. Put your work out there. Like, do the best demo reel you can possibly do and upload it to LinkedIn. You kind of have to build a strong online presence. Every time you post something, there's like people looking constantly at it. One way about going inside the industry is just knocking doors like crazy. And that's good, but it's better. There's a point where your animation gets so good, or your work in general, CG work, gets so good that they start knocking at your door, all the recruiters. And that's kind of like the peak of what you want to achieve.
2 questions. Yeah, so the first one is related to what you were talking about right now, about the migration, the migration difficulties and migration opportunities to go to Canada, for example. Specifically to Canada, I'm Mexican as well. So I also entered into the USMCA, I think it's called now.
Okay.
So do you think there's any challenges like that need to be solved during the pandemic before people like us can migrate, like from Latin America and from Mexico?
I am not so aware of how it's changed because over the last few months, everything's bizarre and everything's evolving and changing. So I don't really know the migration policies at the moment right now in Canada. The studio that's hiring you is usually investing in you, providing you with a work permit. And so if this work permit has some limitations, the studio right now may not want to hire you from abroad. They would rather search for somebody who's local and it's easier for them and they don't have to do so much paperwork, mostly right now because of the pandemic. But I think already it's starting to open up. It's not like in the first months that every country was like, ah. Right now it's like the second wave and a lot of countries are starting to shut down their border lines again and everything's kind of hermetic in the industry. But you can definitely find something or work remotely for a company. Right now, a lot of studios, for example, in Vancouver, in Montreal, in the US, they're hiring remotely. They trust you way more. Right now, in general, since people are working from home, they don't care so much if you are in Shanghai or in Spain. Like, you're working from home anyway, you have your computer there. So that is like a huge step in this industry.
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you very much. The second question, I loved your Avatar reaction video. It was amazing. Everyone loves Avatar, or everyone should love Avatar. So for 3D animation, what will be your approach for this kind of dynamic, heavy action martial arts sequences? Because you have Clone Wars, you have Samurai Jack, you have all these amazing shows and animation that are really high combat, and for action lovers who are doing in animation, that's probably a must. So what will be your approach? Because I've done some research on some studios who have really cool action sequences, like the animation supervisor is like a martial black belt artist, right? So yeah, for people who are not martial artists, like what will be like a legitimate approach for that?
Instead of shooting your own reference, you can always search externally for cool sources. I do recommend that you have multiple camera views, as many as you can, so that way you can really not guess any of the blocking process. That really helps you. And go ahead and search for a lot of things that have already been done. Like, for example, I animated just for fun Spider-Verse sequence. So I was not copying anything, but I was kind of going in and looking at the motion and the way they did this, try to see reference of people jumping, of people crawling, of them going off buildings, of how Spider-Man kind of swings with the web. And all this gives you like a mental breakdown of how you want to do things. And with the camera, what I do is I first have like a little ball. So I just do like a bouncing ball, and I make sure that the camera is working with the animation. I go in any editing software like Premiere Pro, for example, and I make sure that all my cuts in the sequence are working and that my ball has fluidity in every single camera cut. That is very important in action sequences. And once you kind of nail that ball and its performance, like how much it's stretching, squashing, moving around, then you can have a body that does the same thing. It's always more complicated to do this very complex body dynamic driven shots. If you dominate the pendulum, the bouncing ball, all those little elements, everything will become easier and sort of more intuitive to you. Whereas I see in the Discord channel was this guy telling me, do you happen to see a lot of junior animators, like very junior, they haven't even started in the industry and they have never done like a bouncing ball or a pendulum or a squirrel, you know, all these little exercises. And they jump straight into a sequence where there's two characters just talking and gesturing. And I was like, yeah, that's really complicated because they want to run before they crawl and before they start walking. So that's just one of the things I would recommend. Really learn the basics, because it's not useful to build a castle if it's hollow in the very base. It will break down.
Right, thank you very much, Ilse. It's funny that you mentioned it because I was actually working on a Spider-Verse shot.
Awesome. I can later share with you kind of my process. I made an interview with David Hahn. I don't know if you know him, but he was one of the animators in Spider-Verse.
Yeah. He got an award, right?
Yeah, he won an Annie Award. He's insane.
Yeah.
He's such a kind person, and you can see his demo reel and how he approaches stuff. So it's really cool to see work behind cameras. Don't copy anything, just use it as inspiration. But yeah, that's
it's really
cool.
I tried to approach mine with a comic book sequence, but it feels really cheaty. Like you're literally copying 2D sequences to 3D, but thank you very much, Ilse.
When you're trying to manage a 2D image in a 3D environment, your rig just doesn't work that way sometimes. And that is like the danger of drawing thumbnails. I've been there. I like drawing thumbnails, but sometimes you get like, you cannot get one pose and it gets very polishy. But that's also a good learning curve for you, because you can learn to really clean things up and to work with the standards of the very important animation studios, and always show your work. Be constant in looking for feedback, even with your parents, even with the lady who cleans the house, even with your aunt, even if they don't know anything about animation. It is important that you go to people and be like, hey, does this feel natural? We are naturally good at knowing what moves the right way because we watch that all the time. So sometimes they can say, yeah, no, that look that he's giving, he looks like he's confused, and you're like, oh no, I was not going for that, you know? That is really cool. So obviously if you're working in a studio, you cannot do that because you have all your contracts and your NDAs that you cannot show your work. But if you're doing personal job, you can just go ahead, be on LinkedIn posting, asking people what they think, and that gives you an online presence as well.
I want to ask a basic question. I don't know what will it. In studio, software matters or the results? I mean, if we are using Nuke for compositing or After Effects, so what will studio need there? Studio matters software or the results? They go with results or they demand for the software skills?
Nuke, for example, is kind of the industry standard for compositing. Some studios do have their own personal software, like for example Pixar has Presto, which is kind of their Maya, and they animate in Presto. So yeah, it can get fancy, but usually the standard, for example, is Maya, the standard for animation. The standard for compositing is Nuke. So my advice, if you're doing a compositing reel to enter a company, would be to focus on Nuke. I have one video that talks about specifically compositing demo reels in Nuke, and you can totally check it out. It's in YouTube. I can leave you a link. There is other software. You can use other software. That's awesome that you know more than one thing. Mostly if you want to drive towards the generalist area.
And what about Blender? in industry?
Blender. That's like a very hot topic right now. I don't know where the industry is gonna go in the next 10 years, because let's face it, Maya is very expensive for everybody. Right now I'm paying for a Maya license, and sometimes right now they have the indie version and the student version, and those are kind of better depends what you're doing. But Blender is really making its way to being one of the best softwares out there, and it's open source, so everybody can just kind of comment on what they want as new features, and it's evolving to be a very powerful software. It's maybe gonna outcast some of the softwares we know right now, because it's like a lot of softwares in one, right? You can do ZBrush, you can do Nuke, and everything in Blender.
In Blender, yes, everything is in Blender.
Yeah, it's
In fact,
insane.
2D animation is also there.
Right, and you can do like very cool 3D animation things look 2D in Blender, or mix like drawing with 3D. It's just marvelous.
So now they are developing VR in Blender.
They are breaking all the industry standards, and I think that's awesome. The fact that they're free is really cool, because all of the other softwares eventually are gonna have to strive towards that, or towards something similar maybe. So yeah, we'll see. It's always good to learn more than one software. So if you can know more, it always makes you richer as an artist.
I always share my work in your community.
Yeah!
In our Worldspace Blender work.
You do some awesome work. You have something that's really good, which is being self-taught. We need that in this industry. If you are not self-taught, you are missing out on so much, because there's people just waiting for teachers or for, I don't know, anybody to give them knowledge. And if you go out and look for that knowledge yourself, that really changes the game, and that puts you forward. So always do that. Always keep on being good and pushing yourself every single day.
My question is, I'm a junior animator. I started working in September this year. How long will it take for me to do an animation? I found it very difficult. They ask me a lot how many time I need, and I don't know how to answer.
It really comes to measuring your time. So whenever you have free time, just try to do simple things. For example, a walk cycle. And in how much time do you tackle... Walk cycle is not easy, huh? But in how much time do you tackle a walk cycle? Or give yourself a very, very, very little piece of dialogue, or just like an expression, and just animate that. Just a very little thing until you think it's kind of polished. In my experience when I was a junior, your leads kind of guide you through that process. They understand that you're new, and so giving you like, how much time will this take you, is kind of more of a freelance kind of animator. But are you in a studio? Do you have leads, or are you working as a freelance artist?
That's a little bit strange, because we are in a studio that is starting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
At least the animation part. They used to be my teachers, but they hired me to become the animator of the studio.
Yeah.
But I don't have a lead. No one to tell me you should do this or that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to find it my way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's hard.
Yeah, very.
For now, I'm in a studio, but I'm alone. I'm the only animator for now.
I hope you do. It's really, what you're doing is really interesting, because you're kind of having to be your own supervisor at your first role. So it's gonna be challenging for sure, but you will be able to do some animation, maybe not the highest quality at first, but you will learn a lot by working just by yourself. I do advise you to continue with classes, with mentoring all the time. And if you can have somebody who's experienced in animation and can judge your work from outside, so somebody who's kind of working at a studio, yeah, so who you can show the professional work you're doing to, and they can give you feedback, that would be awesome for you. Have someone who's kind of your mentor, is not touching your animation, but is a senior who's there to support you and to see if you're doing things right or wrong. Because we all know that as animators or as any kind of CG artist, you need feedback. You need constant feedback. You need, no, this light is wrong, or this hand looks so awful, like this pose is not working. So yeah, we are very bad critics of our own art because we see it over and over again. So it would be very helpful for you to get some fresh eyes, yeah, of somebody who knows animation.
But that's why I came here too, because it was an opportunity to meet someone who had some bouteille, as we say in French,
Yeah.
to help me with this. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, thank you. It's so cool to have a community that supports you. And thank you guys for being so awesome and always being there. It feels nice to be backed up by a cool community of international people that's just like trying to be good at being artists. Do you have any thought on how animating characters for immersive environments, VR in particular, might differ from animating characters? Yes. Okay. This is a cool question. So right now I'm working in the video game industry, and I can tell you it's so different from everything that I've done before because you are animating in 360. I think that's one of the hardest things to do. When you have a camera, you kind of cheat things to that camera. That's not proper, that's not good. You always want to block things and spline things and kind of work your way in perspective as well as in camera so the things are working. Sonny, my patron, the other day he was asking me, hey, does it really matter if you're animating properly in perspective? And I was like, yes, because if you are not paying attention to how things are looking in 3D space, then when the lighting department comes over and lights up your shot, maybe your character looks awesome from camera, but his feet are so off the ground that you can see the shadow projecting of the feet being here, right? There are many little mistakes that come afterwards, so you're really kind of pooping on the pipeline and everybody else that goes after you is gonna have problems. So I would say that's one of the challenges of working in VR, because character, like the person can move around as in the same way as video games. If you're interested in that, I have a very interesting video, a very cool video that I loved with Richard Lico, who's one of my friends, and he is an animator in PolyArc, and he does animation for a game, mostly a character named Quill, and he's very technical and he speaks a lot about VR, so I totally recommend that one to you. It's in my channel with Richard Lico. It's already 1:39, so I think I gotta leave you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Any more questions? Just any questions on the floor that I can address really quickly?
I have one. I'm sorry.
No, let me know.
How do you, I noticed you stay, well, probably because you have some experience in the industry, but you have like a lot of friends in the industry. Do you have any advice for like people who are not yet totally in, contacting people, staying in touch, but not being like interested,
Clingy.
you know?
Yeah, totally. Okay, sure. That's a great question. And that goes very hand in hand with a question I had via email as well yesterday. So building your online presence, how does that look like? You guys want to have a strong portfolio and strong little pieces that you can post constantly on social media. You want to have an Instagram account. I personally rely deeply on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Artstation, it really depends on which branch you are specializing in. I can make a little tutorial in general about how to handle LinkedIn. I have become viral on LinkedIn many times right now. And it's because of that, because I built, way before starting YouTube, I don't think you need like a YouTube or something like that to build a strong online presence. You already know the names that are going around because you see their work and it's just awesome. There's a lot of animators and really great artists out there, so you have to stand out, kind of give your approach of how do you see the world, even more than how am I artistically. It's like the persona that I want to build. What can I bring to the table and make this world different, you know? So a lot of things recruiters look for is, okay, if I have 1,100 applications, who, and they're all good artists, who is giving me that wow factor. Accepting friend requests or connection requests in LinkedIn of people you don't necessarily know, that's good. I differ from those who say it's not. And try to keep it within the industry. I mean, if a chef tries to contact me through LinkedIn, maybe I'll say no thank you, because his posts will be about cakes and I'm not interested in cakes. So yeah, he won't be interested in animation maybe either. So I try to keep it that way, segmented. But yeah, that's how you build an online presence. And I can talk about that more because I feel like it's a very interesting topic and it can give you so much feedback, so much job opportunities. It's clearly very important.
Thank you.
Don't worry.
Thank you so much.
Don't worry. In Patreon as well, I share a lot of content about CG, art, animation, and if you're interested in that, you can talk to me personally all the time. I'm not going to be posting videos for the next 2 to 3 weeks because I'm going on vacation tomorrow. That's why this wasn't a Friday. So just to let you guys know that I will be absent a little bit, but I will be active in the Discord channel.
Thank you.
Great
Goodbye.
day, beautiful
Thank you.
artists.
Have a great vacation.
Enjoy life. Thank you so much for
Bye.
being here. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.